What's going on, guys, and welcome to my audio review for Friday Night SmackDown for Friday, May 15th, 2020. I am Graham G. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. Overall, I thought it was a decent show. Nothing too great, nothing too bad. In other words, kind of par for the course of the Blue brand in the last 6 or 7 months, ever since they moved to Fox. I won't really get into too much about that. I feel like I rant about it every single week, about how abysmal SmackDown is overall. Although I will say I think Money in the Bank did a decent job of kind of resetting the cards a little bit. We have Otis as Mr. Money in the Bank. So that's an interesting card that they have in play whenever they want to use it. They kind of teased him cashing in at the end of the episode, even though he didn't, of course. We have that. We got the hacker thing going on right now, which I will say this up front is not CM Punk. I absolutely love the fact that Punk teased being the hacker on Tuesdays backstage, kind of trolling those people, thinking that it was him. I thought that was amazing. I think the same video that we got the hacker on this show, that we got for the hacker on this show, was the same video they showed for him at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. So really nothing new on that front. Although I feel like it's a lose-lose. Because if it's Mustafa Ali, as many of us expect it to be, with the whole light thing and whatever, in addition to the fact that he hasn't been on TV in months and months and months, and I've also seen it, reported that it could be both Ali and Chad Gable, Shorty G, whatever. Which, at that point, it doesn't fit either of their characters. So it is a possibility. But again, it's a lose-lose. Because if it is them, I guess it's a nice little push. Although I thought the gimmick they had for Ali about a year ago, when he was on the show, stopping common criminals, and, they aired that first vignette for him to come back. I think it's Stomping Grounds last year. And they aired them for a few weeks on SmackDown, and then it went absolutely nowhere. And then they brought him back, he did nothing, and then he disappeared again. So if this is his new gimmick, I mean, it could work, maybe. It screams ICU. It screams Sami Callihan from Impact Wrestling right now, who's doing the gimmick 10 times better, because he was doing the hacker gimmick in WWE about 5 or 6 years ago. So it's kind of, he did that from his WWE days, but he just fits that persona so much better than Ali or Chad Gable. Maybe they'll make it work. Maybe it'll be entertaining. I just don't really have high hopes for it, to be honest with you. But if it isn't them, A, I don't know who else it would be, and B, why would you have them off the show for 4 or 5 months if it won't be them? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's so obvious that it's Ali or Chad Gable or both, just because they haven't been on the show in months and months and months. I have no idea when the last time we saw Chad Gable was on the show before Mania, losing to Sheamus. I don't think we've seen him in any of these empty arena shows, but he absolutely was on the show, maybe right before Elimination Chamber, losing to Sheamus. Ali, I could not even tell you. I know he wasn't in the Rumble. I don't think he's been on the show all year, and it's fucking May. So they got to figure out what they're doing with that. So we have the hacker stuff in play. Otis is Mr. Money in the Bank. They got the Mandy Rose storyline still going on right now. Sonya's doing great work. They have the beginning, the kickoff of the Intercontinental Championship Tournament, which I spoke in more detail about on Thursday's Wrestle Rant Radio, which, by the way, you should absolutely go out of your way to check out this week. New episode went up on Thursday. In addition to RJ and I breaking down this entire past week in wrestling, we also air the interview that I did with Otis from last week, right before Money in the Bank. So it's very timely, it's very relevant, considering he ended up winning the entire thing. So listen to Wrestle Rant Radio from Thursday. It's available on nextairwrestling.net, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Podbean, Google Play, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio. My interview with Otis is available, and also my interview with Matt Riddle you can check out right now on Daily DDT, talking all things NXT, Brock Lesnar, wrestling in front of no fans, MMA stars in WWE, and so much more. So anyway, where was I? I thought SmackDown overall was a decent show. It looks like they have a few things to kind of build off of now, whereas before there really wasn't anything happening on the show at all. And it sucks because we don't have Sami Zayn right now, and at least they're doing something with the Intercontinental Championship, and I don't want to say they should have vacated him. Yeah, because from a storyline standpoint, they had Brock Lesnar off the show for 3 months, and he doesn't get stripped of the WWE or Universal Championship. But Sami Zayn is gone for a month, and they have to force him to relinquish that Intercontinental title. Now, I do understand they're doing that because they don't know when this thing might be over, and I assume he won't be back until the quarantine stuff is off and things are it's a bit safer to come back to work. I don't know if Sami Zayn ever expressed interest in coming back anytime soon. Probably not if they're taking the championship off of him. So I get that, but I don't know. It just kind of seems a little strange to me. So why would they have him retain the championship at WrestleMania. You can't tell me they didn't know beforehand, like, oh, Sami Zayn won't be leaving. Like, he was on the shows at the PC right before WrestleMania. So I find it very hard to believe Sami would have up and said, hey, I'm not going to show up to work after I retain my title at WrestleMania. Sami Zayn doesn't really seem like that type of person, so I don't know. I don't work there. I don't know the guy, so I have no clue. But it just seems a little odd to me. So hopefully they can kind of get back to that at some point. But we did have the kickoff to the Intercontinental Championship Tournament on this show to crown a new champion, which I assume would conclude at the Backlash pay-per-view next month. We do have the full brackets available. We have Daniel Bryan and Drew Gulak in the opening round, which we got on this show. We also had Elias versus King Corbin at the beginning of this show, and the beginning of the tournament on this show as well. The other two matches include Jeff Hardy versus Sheamus, which goes down next week, and then AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura. Now, all the matches sound good on paper. Corbin and Elias was exactly what you would expect it to be, which I'll say outright right now before I get to it later. AJ Nakamura should be good. Jeff Hardy, Sheamus, Bryan Gulak was great, whatever. But why is AJ Styles in this tournament? There must have been something said where I missed, where they brought up why he's even in the championship to begin with. Now, I know they have this whole brand-to-brand invitation bullshit, which is as dumb as the wild card rule was and all this other dumb nonsense. But did they ever explain why? I think they might have said, like, stay tuned to our social platforms for more information, blah, blah, blah. But they did say at one point, unless I'm completely hearing things now and making shit up, I could have sworn they said that this the brand-to-brand invitation, get the fuck out of here, will only be used 4 times a year. Now, we got Charlotte on the show from NXT really she's from Raw, but she's also on NXT as their women's champion. And now we're getting King Corbin on Raw this week. You would think that would be it. So why are we getting AJ Styles in this tournament? Is he a part of the SmackDown brand now? I mean, maybe he wasn't on Raw this week, but I would think that, I don't know, it just seems odd to me. Because they were still seemingly continuing the feud between AJ and Undertaker. And then why even have Undertaker, or rather AJ, in the Money in the Bank ladder match if you weren't going to have him win? And you had no plans for him on Raw. Why bring him back to Raw? Why not just bring him back to SmackDown? There's a lot of questions I have here, and I assume they're just booking this shit on the fly. But anyway, as far as this episode is concerned, we kicked off the show with an episode of Miz TV with the Miz, John Morrison, and Otis. I thought it was a solid segment overall. Obviously Miz and Morrison taking shots at Otis, saying, how did you win the Money in the Bank briefcase? I won it. Miz is saying 10 years ago, and it propelled me to superstardom, winning the WWE Championship, which it's amazing to believe that was a decade ago. I remember watching that live, and that was 10 years ago that The Miz won the briefcase. I didn't watch that live, but I did watch him cash in live on Raw to become WWE Champion. I think that says more about The Miz than it does about Otis, that his biggest career accomplishment, The Miz that is, was 10 years ago, whereas Otis is the here and the now. And they talked about how he didn't even really win the match, he just caught the briefcase, he got lucky, blah, blah, blah. So they challenged him to a tag team match later on in the show. Otis said that Tucky wasn't available. Didn't say why. I'm not sure if it was a travel issue or it was an injury. Didn't say. We haven't seen Tucker on the show, I don't think, since he lost to Dolph, I want to say, on the SmackDown right after WrestleMania over a month ago. I don't know if we've seen him on the show since. So it's odd. I assume this was done on purpose. I'm sure Tucker is available. He's perfectly fine. I have heard nothing about him being hurt, but I assume they did this because obviously his partner, spoiler alert, surprise, surprise, ended up being the Universal Champion Braun Strowman. So they just kind of did that to tease the possibility of Braun, getting cashed in on by Otis and whatever. So hopefully Heavy Machinery isn't over. I think Otis as Mr. Money in the Bank has potential, has promise if they book it properly. That being said, though, it is odd. We aren't seeing more of Tucker right now on SmackDown than we currently are. Anyway, so that was the opening segment. We then had the kickoff to the Intercontinental Championship Tournament between Daniel Bryan and Drew Gulak. Very good match, as you would expect. A lot like the match they had at Elimination Chamber over, feels like a millennium ago at this point because, that was back when we actually had crowds. What a time. What a time to be alive. But we had Bryan and Gulak here in a rematch from the Chamber pay-per-view from back in March. And it was as good as you would expect. They got plenty of time. Gulak looked very good in defeat. I'm not surprised at all that Bryan advanced, as he should have. And Gulak wasn't mad that Bryan beat him. They shook hands afterward. They're still allies, which I'm glad to see. And Gulak even said as much in a post-match WWE.com interview when he was asked about the tournament, he wasn't like, oh, Bryan beat me again, I'm getting pissed, and then he'll turn on him soon, which I think it's too soon for that anyway. I'm glad they're continuing on with them as a tag team. He did say it was an honor to be getting opportunities. I mean, when he said it there, it really put into perspective how cool it is for me and other people, I'm sure, to see Gulak finally become not a mainstay, but a real fixture on the show. I feel like he's on SmackDown more often than not. And yeah, you can attribute that to, Roman Reigns not showing up for work right now, Sami Zayn doing the same thing, not showing up for SmackDown, which they have absolutely every right to not show up, given their own personal situations. And, it's their right. If they don't want to come to work, they shouldn't have to, and there should be no heat on them for it. But anyway, with Drew Gulak, it's really cool to see him getting so many opportunities. I mean, he had the opportunity to compete in the Intercontinental Championship Tournament here. We saw him, compete for a Money in the Bank qualifying match about a few weeks ago on SmackDown. He was at WrestleMania. I think he won at WrestleMania. Or I think Cesaro may have won. I don't remember. But he was on the WrestleMania Kickoff show. He's been able to do a lot in the last couple months. He got the main roster, the main card match at Elimination Chamber a couple of months ago against Bryan, which it was easily the best match in the entire show. And granted, he's not winning any of these opportunities, but it is cool to see him featured nonetheless. He's having a lot of good showings in defeat against Daniel Bryan, against, Cesaro, King Corbin, all these other people. And, I just wanted to say that it was cool to see. So Daniel Bryan wins. He is interviewed by Renee Young afterward, where he mentions that it was almost exactly 5 years ago. And according to Wikipedia, he's right, that it was almost exactly 5 years ago that he won the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania 31, which we all know about. But what a lot of people forget was that he never really had the chance to have a real run as Intercontinental Champion. He had to vacate the belt due to injury, the same injury that cost him his career 9 months later. So he won the title. He actually retired technically as Intercontinental Champion. He didn't come out with the belt in February of 2016. They took the championship off of him on May 11th, according to Wikipedia, 2015, because they kind of figured, okay, his injury is going to be long-term. We got to take the championship off of him, which sucks. So a lot like Sami Zayn, where they vacated the championship from Sami, they had to do the same thing with Daniel Bryan 5 years ago. But he is determined to get that belt back, and he believes that the person who holds that Intercontinental Championship should be the best, I don't know if he said wrestler, but the best all-around performer in WWE, and he thinks that that's him. So, very cool promo. I thought this was a great promo from Bryan, and he's been saying this for years, dude. 4 years. He was on an episode of Table for Three. I don't know if it was while he was Intercontinental Champion or soon after, but it was with Ryback and someone else. I forgot who. And they were talking about, had all been Intercontinental. So it must have been after he vacated it, because I think Ryback was champion by that point. And Ryback was the one who won the vacated belt after Bryan had to relinquish it. But anyway, so he had mentioned on that episode of Table for Three 5 years ago that he wanted to make that championship exclusive to SmackDown and have this great run and really elevate that championship. Now, the Intercontinental Championship has not felt important in ages. I mean, the last couple reigns have been completely forgettable. Sami was champion for all of a month, didn't really do anything with it. I was kind of questionable. It's kind of not all that high on the idea of Sami winning it in the first place. I mean, I'm a big Sami Zayn fan, but they had booked him into oblivion over the last year or two, to the point where he's just a fucking loser. So for him to win the championship was incredibly random. And then he, didn't show up for work, and now he's being stripped of the title. So before him was Braun. Braun did nothing with that championship either. He held it for all of a month. He was champion for all of a month. Nakamura was champion for 5 or 6 months, but he too did absolutely nothing as champion. He got beat constantly, was never on the show, had maybe 2 or 3 title defenses. That was a wash. Before him, it was Balor. Balor was a very forgettable champion. Bobby Lashley as well. Dean Ambrose had a forgettable reign. You would really have to go all the way back to when Rollins held the championship 2 years ago for the last time that championship actually meant anything. So maybe Bryan winning is the best call. I'm not sure. If you were to ask me my early pick for the tournament, I would probably say Bryan. I think it comes down to Bryan and AJ Styles. I do. So Bryan won here. Next week, I think it's Jeff Hardy and Sheamus. I think Bryan and Hardy would be awesome, but I could see them wanting to do, heel versus face. So maybe Sheamus wins that first match, and then it's Bryan and Sheamus. God forbid we get that again, but they actually work well together. As long as Bryan goes to the finals, I don't mind. So Bryan probably versus AJ, because I don't see anyone on that right side of the bracket advancing aside from AJ Styles. Elias beat King Corbin again, spoiler, later on in the show, on this show. And then next week we have AJ Nakamura, which is cool, but they're both heels. Where Cesaro is in any of this, I have no fucking clue. He did have one thing to say about it. He didn't really say anything, but the WWE on Fox Twitter account posted a picture of the bracket on early Friday night before the episode, as the episode was kind of getting started. And Cesaro replied with a GIF, simply of him shaking his head at ringside. And I completely agree. You know, all the people that were saying, oh, Cesaro shouldn't only just be in it, he should win it. He's not even in the fucking thing. Why is a Raw superstar and AJ Styles in this tournament, but not Cesaro? That makes absolutely no sense. Literally 0 sense. If they're having Bryan and Gulak go up against each other and they're supposed to be friends, why don't we get Nakamura and Cesaro? Why the fuck not? I know they're both heels, but so are AJ and Nakamura. So, I don't know. I was a little disappointed about that. They have all this mid-card talent on SmackDown, and they can't even bother to put Cesaro in the fucking tournament. But what was I saying? So, between AJ and Nakamura, obviously AJ's winning. And then you have Elias and Corbin. Elias won. If Elias beats AJ, you know, all bets are off, but I assume AJ wins. We get AJ in the finals against Bryan. AJ could win. He's never before been Intercontinental Champion. I guess he could just move on over to SmackDown. That might be the idea behind this. But I think Bryan as champion would be better, just because, you know, he never really had a real... I mean, I guess you could have AJ win and then have Bryan in chase mode. That's an idea. I think that'd be pretty cool. They've feuded before over the over the WWE title, but the roles were reversed. AJ was the babyface and Bryan was the heel. So to have them revisit that rivalry with Bryan as the babyface and AJ as the heel could be pretty cool. But yeah, Bryan won here. He is very adamant about getting that belt back and making that championship mean something again, which for his sake and for the fans' sake, here's hoping that he does, because that championship is as prestigious as the belt around my waist right now. And I'm not wearing a belt currently, but if I was, that's how prestigious it would be compared to the WWE title. And that they're even, because that WWE championship means absolutely nothing. Dana Brooke beat Naomi on this show in a rematch from about a month ago, and Dana Brooke beat Naomi to qualify for the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match. It was a perfectly fine match. Nothing against Dana Brooke. She seems like a perfectly nice person. She's fine in the ring. I saw all these people saying, oh, she had this breakout performance in the ladder match. I cannot tell you how many fucking times I've heard this. Oh, Dana Brooke has potential. She has potential. She has potential. She had a great performance here. She had a great performance there. But until they do something with her, I don't give a shit, to be honest with you. You could say the same thing about Chad Gable. I mean, I'm a big Chad Gable fan. You could say the same thing about that guy. But with Dana Brooke, first of all, she's not as good as Chad Gable. Second of all, they've been playing with this idea of doing something with her for at least 5 years now. She was in NXT for a little while. They did nothing with her there. And she's had some good matches. I won't deny that. She has improved immensely from where she was 4 or 5 years ago. But they had done absolutely... I mean, I can't even really remember, aside from recently, the last time she won an important match on her own. She has won a few. I think she pinned Sasha Banks earlier this year, but again, it went absolutely nowhere, so why should I give a fuck? She's been in the ladder match 2 years in a row now. She lost twice. To a certain point, it just gets to a point where, you know, strong performances in defeat mean absolutely nothing. Because if they're built up to lose constantly, then who the hell is going to care? I know I certainly don't. So she beats Naomi here. My issue here really isn't with Dana Brooke winning so much as it is with Naomi losing again. So I said this to Alexis while we were watching the show last night, because I'm like, why did Dana Brooke win? Naomi came back with all this momentum and fanfare. That's someone that was already over. You have a star in Naomi, and granted, she's been to that mountaintop before. She's been a former SmackDown Women's Champion. She's won the WrestleMania Women's Battle Royal. Yeah, they have to build up new talent. I don't think Dana Brooke is that person. That's, again, another conversation for another day. But with Naomi, which I just kind of got done having that conversation. But with Naomi, though, she came back with all this momentum in the Rumble. People were talking about Naomi. She got one of the bigger reactions in that Women's Rumble when she came out. You know, lost, whatever. She went for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Well, first she lost to Carmella. Remember that? They had a 4-way on SmackDown. She got pinned by Carmella, which was odd. And then she got her title shot after a while at the Super Showdown show in a match that wasn't that good. She had another title shot at WrestleMania, lost again. And then she's now lost to Dana Brooke twice. Now, they did play up how frustrated Naomi might be, so they could be going for a heel turn here, which, again, I don't give a fuck. I think Naomi works a lot better as a babyface. She turned heel about 5 years ago, and it just didn't work. It was a unique, it was kind of cool to see. She did well in the role, but they never really went all the way with her. And they have before. It's not to say like Dana Brooke, where they've never gone all the way with Naomi. They did when they put the championship on her twice a few years ago. But that was 3 years ago. Like, they got to do more with her now, because she still very much is over. She's been with the company for 10 years, yet so is Natalya, but I don't look at Naomi as being like Natalya 2.0. I think Naomi still has a lot left in the tank, and Natalya is good, but like her character bores me to fucking tears. Naomi still connects with crowds. She's over. She's interesting. She can go in the ring. She can have good matches, yet they're doing absolutely nothing with her. It feels like they're going out of their way to ruin any momentum that Naomi has left from that Rumble return in January. So I don't know what they're doing with her. Again, it might be leading somewhere to a heel turn, but I'm not even completely sold on that. I would rather see Carmella go back to being a heel, which was teased at one point about a month ago, than Naomi. I think Naomi is just a natural babyface. So to turn her, I think would be stupid. I think Dana Brooke honestly works better as a heel, because she was she was a heel in NXT. I thought she played her role well. She sucked in the ring, but she had the character stuff down pat. And then they turned her babyface, and all she does is flex. Who cares? Again, she seems like a really nice person from what I've seen, so all the best to her. But as a character, she just bores me to fucking tears. I'm sorry. She just bores me to fucking tears. We then had Charlotte Flair in the ring as part of the brand-to-brand invitation. Who gives a fuck? They had Charlotte in the ring talking about her dominance over the Raw Women's Division, the NXT Women's Division, now the NXT Women's Champion, before being interrupted by none other than Bayley and Sasha Banks. Now, Charlotte did her best here to kind of, tease some tension between Sasha and Bayley, and she made a lot of good points. Charlotte's promos aren't always the greatest, but she made a lot of good points here about how it was Sasha who made Bayley relevant in NXT, which is true. Bayley beat Sasha in that awesome Match of the Year contender, the best women's match I've ever seen in this company at TakeOver Brooklyn. And I was there, so I'm biased, but I think a lot of people would agree, to win the NXT Women's Championship 5 years ago. And she said now Bayley is the only reason why you are still the SmackDown Women's Champion, which again is partially true. I think Sasha I don't remember the finish of the match, but I think Sasha did play a factor. She factored into the finish of the Tamina Bayley match at Money in the Bank and helped her retain the title. It kind of seemed like there at the pay-per-view that they might be going back to Tamina and Bayley, and they still could. Like, for example, I am 100% positive they're going back to Braun and Bray at the next pay-per-view, or if not another pay-per-view after that. Yet, Bray Wyatt was nowhere to be seen on the show. Firefly Funhouse, Bray, The Fiend, I'm not even sure if he was mentioned at all, aside from Braun beating him at the pay-per-view. But I'm sure they're going back to that. So they could always go back to Bayley and Tamina. I sure as hell hope not, because the match sucked. So I saw some people saying, it was a good match. It was decent. I didn't even see that. I thought the match was terrible. I guess Tamina's terrible. But I thought this was a good segment. Bayley also did bring up, and I'm a big history guy, so I'm glad they acknowledged this, that it was Charlotte who Bayley beat to win that championship in the first place, to become a two-time champion. Now she beat Charlotte. She beat Charlotte both times to win that championship. Charlotte at Money in the Bank a year ago won the title from Becky, and then Bayley cashed in on Charlotte immediately. So she actually beat her to win the championship the first time and the second time when she beat her on that, first SmackDown show on Fox back in October. I completely forgot about the Money in the Bank thing. But they have a lot of history even dating back to NXT and early on in their respective Raw runs. Late 2016, early 2017 for the two of them. They have good chemistry, and they are facing off next week on the show. For what reason? I have no idea. Again, they said 4 times a year people can switch shows, but it's like, is it this week and next week? Is it 4 periods at a time as opposed to 4 shows? Because Charlotte was on this week and next week, and then AJ's on the show next week too. And assuming he advances, which he probably will, he'll be on SmackDown a lot more than just one night. I'm not really sure what they're going for here. Anyway, though, I thought it was a good segment. They did a good job of setting up the match for next week. I'm sure it'll be decent, but they're both heels, so it's kind of random. And not only that, and obviously they're kind of killing time before they get to Bayley and Sasha, probably at SummerSlam if I had to guess. Excuse me. But with Charlotte, though, I'm not really sure. I just don't get it. I'll just say that much. I really just don't get it. Why not focus on other women in that division like Naomi? Yeah, they gave Dana Brooke a victory, but I don't know. I just think it's random. Anyway, we had our second quarterfinal match in the Intercontinental Championship Tournament on this show with Elias beating King Corbin. Thank the frickin' Lord. I thought Elias winning at WrestleMania would mean that Corbin wins here. And honestly, it wouldn't have been a bad idea. Although I expect AJ to beat Nakamura, and unless they're turning AJ face, which I don't get the feeling that they are, I don't get that sense at all, then he should probably be facing, after facing a heel in the opening round, he should probably face a babyface in the second round. And he ain't losing to Elias, I'll guarantee you of that right now. Unless we get a Hurricane beating Rock type of upset, I do not see Elias beating AJ Styles. Maybe King Corbin two times in a row, not AJ Styles. So I'm glad Elias won here. The match was, again, exactly what you would expect it to be, and that it was as mundane, if not a bit better than the WrestleMania match. I still gave zero shits about it. But at least Elias won. I do like that. I was fearful when they announced this tournament that King Corbin would win the entire thing. And listen, I like King Corbin a lot. I do. He had some amazing showings in that King of the Ring tournament late last year. The issue is that he's still doing the dumb King Corbin bullshit. Until he is, stripped of that dumb gimmick, I will not give two fucks about King Corbin at all. I'm sorry. I just don't. I don't want to see him as Mr. Money in the Bank. I don't want to see him as Intercontinental Champion. I just don't want to see the guy really at all for as long as he's doing the dumb King of the Ring gimmick. So it'll likely end up being Elias versus AJ Styles in the semifinals of the tournament at some point down the road. We then had the main event, Otis and his mystery partner being Braun Strowman, as I said earlier, taking on the team of the Miz and John Morrison. Solid match. It was really more about, Otis and Braun finding chemistry as it was about having a competitive match. I hate that Miz and Morrison lost again. They lost here. They lost at Money in the Bank. They lost the Lucha House Party. They lost the tag team titles. They've been losing a lot. Now, I know they won that 8-man tag team match last week on SmackDown. I can't say they're on a losing streak because they won a week ago. But, they got to win more important matches. And I really hope this doesn't mean they're going to split up or they're teasing tension. And they never really tease that they are, but I just hope that's not the route they're going down here. Because the first time they split up, they never teased tension then either. They were as thick as thieves, and then one night Miz was just, hey, fuck you, I'm going to Raw, so might as well split up. So that doesn't really necessarily mean that just because there's no tension doesn't mean WWE is planning to, or it doesn't mean that WWE isn't planning to not split up Miz and Morrison. So there's still a chance it could happen. I hope it doesn't. They're as good together now as they are ever going to be. And in terms of what they might do with Miz and Morrison on their own, they could have a nice little feud. They might need more single stars, but between everyone in the Intercontinental Championship Tournament, they don't need Miz and Morrison in that mid-card scene. They don't really need them in the main event scene right now. So just keep them right where they are. So Braun and Otis win, after which Braun did, not after the match, but during the match, I forgot to mention this, Braun attempted to do a worm. Now, Otis's looks awesome. I love when Otis does it. Braun's looked absolutely terrible. I can't even say that it looked like a fish out of water because that's basically what Otis looks like when he does it. And that's a compliment because it looks really good. When Braun did it, it was cringeworthy. Now, the guy tried, and I give him props, but it looked terrible. So Braun and Otis win. They celebrate their victory. Mandy Rose comes out on the stage, out on the ramp, and is saying congrats to Otis. And then Otis sees this as an opportunity to maybe tease cashing in on Braun. Now, he doesn't. And Braun, kind of picked up on what he was doing before he could do it. But Otis said, oh, I'm just joking, man, just joking, yeah. And then he did the fist bump, and that was it. So he didn't knock him out, he didn't, fight or whatever. They just kind of made up. Mandy Rose came in the ring, they celebrated together, and that was it. So, I thought it was a decent show overall. At least there's a few things going on now, as opposed to a month or two ago where there was nothing happening. And they need to be building new stars, with Cena not being there anymore, Goldberg not being there, Roman Reigns not being there for right now. Sami Zayn wasn't a star, but, he was their Intercontinental Champion. It sucks, so they got to start building up new people. But, I thought it was a decent show. Otis was all over it, which was cool. I like Otis being a featured face on the show. He's a fresh face, if nothing else. Like I said earlier, nothing about Braun and Bray being furthered or Braun even being mentioned. I assume they will go back to it. They fucking teased The Fiend at the pay-per-view, so obviously they're going back to it. It may not be a Backlash. As many other people have said, I would love to see it furthered or have them go back to the match at SummerSlam. Keep Bray off TV for the next month or two. Go back to it for SummerSlam. I don't think they will. I think they'll go back to it at Backlash, unless they plan to do Braun and Otis at the Backlash pay-per-view, and that's even more premature than doing Braun and The Fiend. I think that would be a complete mistake. You got to build up Otis more with wins like this and performances like this in order for people to take him seriously as maybe not a main event talent, but in terms of, less of a comedy figure and less of a tag team guy. He's got to win more important matches on his own. He beat Dolph Ziggler a couple weeks ago. He won the main event of Money in the Bank of the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. So that's a good step in the right direction, and more wins like this will do them a lot of good in the long run. But they can't immediately go back to having them team with Tucker or losing to Dolph and people like that and whatever. So hopefully they can stay the course with Otis. And even if he doesn't cash in successfully, which I don't expect him to, but the thing is, Corbin cashed in unsuccessfully 3 years ago. Braun cashed in unsuccessfully 2 years ago. Brock did. He cashed in successfully a year ago, but he wasn't, he was already a made man, obviously. So the briefcase did absolutely nothing to benefit Brock Lesnar. Yeah, he was doing the boombox Brock stuff, but other than that, though, it accomplished literally nothing. We were back to where we started from right before WrestleMania 35. But speaking of Otis and Dolph and Sonya and Mandy, I thought the promo that Sonya cut, I missed it the first time. I had to go back and watch it on the WWE YouTube channel. I thought it was great. I thought she cut a great promo. I don't even think Dolph said anything. He just kind of stood there and, tried to look menacing. I thought her promo was great. I'm looking forward to the mixed tag team match next week. I would have saved that for the pay-per-view, but WWE may feel, hey, Otis is kind of above this storyline now. We got to blow it off now. You can't really go from winning the Money in the Bank ladder match to competing in a not random, but like a mixed tag team match with Dolph fucking Ziggler. Like, he's got to be involved in something a bit more important, I would argue, at the next pay-per-view. So I get it. So next week we're getting Otis and Mandy Rose versus Sonya Deville and Dolph Ziggler in a mixed tag team match. We're also getting the next two matches in the quarterfinals of the Intercontinental Championship Tournament between AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura. WrestleMania rematch, which is cool. And then Jeff Hardy versus Sheamus. And we're also getting, what was the other match? They advertised something else too, I thought. They advertised that. They advertised, obviously, like I said earlier, Bayley and Charlotte Flair. So they have a stacked show on tap for next week. I'm looking forward to it. As for this show, I thought it was decent. Like I said earlier, to kind of go full circle here, wasn't too great, wasn't too bad. It was one of those middle-of-the-road shows. Don't really care about the resurgence of Dana Brooke or whatever you want to call it. I do like the tournament brackets. I have high hopes for that. I thought Bryan and Gulak had a really good match. I thought the main event was what it was. Otis really shined on the show. The Bayley, Sasha, Charlotte stuff was good, but it feels like been there, done that, because they've run the four horsewomen shit into the ground. So we'll see where they go with SmackDown moving forward. They didn't really set the stage for anything at Backlash as of right now, but it was more about the fallout for Money in the Bank than it was kind of putting the pieces in place for the next pay-per-view. So I assume that next week's episode will do a better job of that and giving us a better idea of what we're getting long-term on this brand as opposed to the short-term in regards to next week. So thank you guys, as always, for checking out my audio review for Friday Night SmackDown for May 15th, 2020. Be sure to check out more videos like this on the YouTube channel and nextairwrestling.net. Like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Coming up here tomorrow on the channel is my full review of the latest episode of WWE Break It Down on AJ Styles. Monday, my review of the latest Undertaker The Last Ride show will be up with Chapter 2. Then on Tuesday, the latest installment in the MCU Rewatch Review Series with Chris Mueller, the doc from Bleacher Report. We're breaking down Thor. So a lot going up here on the channel in the coming days. No better time to subscribe than right now. Until next time, guys, have a great rest of your week. And I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.